Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Nabiyyil Ameen. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa tabi'een lahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd. Welcome back to this weekly program, our English lecture. Uh, entitled ESG, Millennials and Islamic Finance, Opportunities and Overlap. And today our guest speaker is Mr. Areeb Siddiqui from United Kingdom. Mr. Areeb is going to join us shortly. So my distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters, Islamic Economics Association, Faculty of Sharia and Islamic Studies, Kuwait University is arranging programs, workshops, trainings, talks, and lectures to promote the nature of Sharia compliant financial models and strategies. As you know that we are conducting lectures, talks, and workshops in which cover usually a wide range of areas in Islamic banking, Islamic microfinance, insurance, capital market, equity market, and also we are covering some specific topics like sukuk, retail, corporate banking products, practical and contemporary some other issues, and debt management, wealth management, and so on. So today we have our guest speaker to conduct the lecture, Mr. Areeb Siddiqui. Let me introduce our guest speaker today. Mr. Areeb Siddiqui is the founder and CEO of Castrol, the Muslim Money Apps, United Kingdom, an award-winning app that makes it easy for Muslims to budget, save, and invest in line with their values. Means Islamic values, Sharia values. Since launching in April 2021, Castrol has been helping thousands of Muslims across the United Kingdom achieve their goals without compromise and has won awards from Santander Bank and University of Cambridge for its efforts. Areeb is a Cambridge MBA with a background in management consulting at Deloitte and also PwC, United Kingdom, specializing in working with banks and wealth managers in the digital space. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, Mr. Areeb Siddiqui is going to conduct today's lecture on ESG, Millennials and Islamic Finance, Opportunities and Overlap. He is going to join us in a while, in a minute. For your information, these programs are always recorded in our YouTube channel in Nadil Iqtisad Islami. And to follow us, you may visit our website www.sharia.org, as well as we do have official Facebook page, and we do have WhatsApp group, Instagram group for the new happenings and arrangements, programs. Please visit our website and main page. So let me welcome Mr. Areeb Siddiqui to this platform. And welcome, Mr. Areeb, to our platform, Islamic Economics Association, Kuwait University.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. Good to be here.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are very much honored to have you in this session. In fact, I have presented an introductory talk. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me invite Mr. Areeb to conduct the lecture. Please welcome, Mr. Areeb.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll just share my screen and then I'll bring the slides up. Okay. Please let me know when you can see what I'm looking at.
Yes, it's visible. Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I don't know if you gave this introduction about sorry, Dr. Mohammed.
I did.
You did. Okay, perfect. So yeah, my name is Areeb Siddiqui. I'm here to tell you about ESG, millennials, and Islamic finance. What is the overlap and what are some of the opportunities? But before I begin, a little bit about myself. So my name is Areeb Siddiqui. I'm a Cambridge MBA. I have 7 years of experience in strategy consulting before I left that to start my own company. I formerly worked at Deloitte and at PwC, and I specialized in digital transformation in assets and wealth management. So that's my background and that's what I do. Um, sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to update the slides slightly. Sorry, we're just going to jump onto these ones. Okay. That is okay. Just realized I was on the wrong set of slides. So yeah, that's me. That is who I am. So I'll tell you a little bit about my company, and then we'll launch into the topic of the day. So I started my company Kestrel because I was fed up. I was fed up of knowing what it was I wanted out of life, but having no idea how I was going to get there, when I was going to be able to do these things, and where to turn to for help. The problem is that as a Muslim growing and living in London, there were very few opportunities for me to participate in normal financial services. As a Muslim, I required things which avoided interest and other activities deemed to be unethical, which were pretty hard to come by. The existing solutions were really poor in terms of their user experience, and were considered quite untrustworthy, and also were quite expensive. So it just wasn't good enough. So things which my peers who were non-Muslim would take for granted, like a mortgage or a savings account, were completely inaccessible to someone like me and over 3 million other Muslims in the United Kingdom alone. So that is why we launched Kestrel, the Muslim Money app, an app that helps Muslims who want to grow their wealth without having to compromise on their beliefs. It works by answering each of those questions. And in doing so, we solve every part of the personal financial journey. How is with our bespoke budgeting tool. We take advantage of a license known as open banking in the UK, where users can plug in their existing banks. We then aggregate their data, their salary, and their expenses to create a bespoke budget for them to find out how much they can and should be saving every single month. When is with our Kestrel savings pots, which we call the Kestrel eggs, where you can visualize your goals on a timeline and then save towards them as you spend automatically. So whether it's a house or a car or simply to retire, you can save towards them monthly in these discrete pots of money that you can then grow by saving or investing those pots. And the final question of the where, we've created a Sharia compliant investment marketplace of a number of third-party investments, allowing you to invest into a halal property portfolio, gold, to speak to a financial advisor, or to invest into a fund. We've also just launched a halal stock screening tool, which we will come into a little bit later as well. So that's Kestrel and what I do in a nutshell. And over the course of this journey, I have made certain forays into the world of ESG because there are certain overlaps between Islamic finance and ESG. ESG standing for environmental, social, and governance. And we'll go into that now. So what are the similarities and what are the differences? Now, Islamic finance is a codex which has existed for 1,400 years. Essentially, it involves, broadly, this is a simplification, but it involves the avoidance of four specific things. It avoids speculative activities, so things like day trading and things where you're making money on things out of your control are completely Islamically compliant. Number two, it avoids uncertainty, like an uncertain contract or something where the terms are up in the air. So a future is a good example of that, would not be Sharia compliant. It avoids interest for a number of reasons. We can try to find the wisdom in why interest is banned and say it's for ethical reasons and it encourages an unethical framework. However, in reality, why is interest banned in Islam? Because specifically in the Quran, there are several mentions as to why the interest, there's several mentions as to interest being banned, and that's just how we should take it. We can, of course, look for wisdom in it, but that is, at the end of the day, why it is banned. And finally, we avoid prohibited activities. By prohibited activities, we mean things like gambling, alcohol, tobacco, and pornographic activities. So that's what Islamic finance is. On the other side of the table, we have ESG. Now, ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance activities. It's something that has been around in some way, shape, or form for some part of the last 2 decades, but has really come to the forefront in the last 5-6 years as something which a lot of investment management firms, a lot of financial institutions have been championing. Broadly, it means that you're trying to invest and make money whilst making a difference, with having an element of social justice behind it and avoiding certain obvious bad activities. So that is what ESG is, and that is what Islamic finance is. And in terms of the overlaps, you can kind of see where they're coming from. They are both ethical frameworks. They both avoid certain prohibited activities. Neither would consider investing into a casino or something which is obviously detrimental or harming the environment or people around you as being something which is investable. So that is kind of where the overlaps are. Now, in terms of what else, that's kind of where they end. In terms of ESG, they don't explicitly avoid interest. They agree with some of the ethical arguments as to why interest would be considered bad, but there's nothing which says they should avoid it. Similarly, speculative activities and uncertainty, they're generally okay with. So that's kind of where the overlaps lie. Now, the differences. Now, I personally feel quite strongly about this, but I believe it's summed up quite well here by someone called Tariq Fancy, who was the former head of sustainability and investing at BlackRock. And essentially what he says is ESG is marketing hype and PR spin. The financial world is greenwashing the public with deadly distraction in sustainable investment practices. I should know, I was at the heart of it. Now, this is interesting, and it highlights something which I think is quite important to note in ESG. Unlike Islamic finance, where we have thousands, we have centuries of work and research by scholars who have figured out exactly what the framework should be off the basis of the Quran and the Hadith and interpretations, ESG doesn't have any defined framework. There is no one set definition. There's no one set regulation which says that this is what is ESG and this isn't. A number of people have been trying it over the years. In Europe, they've been starting to implement it into the MiFID directives. In the US, they're doing the same thing, but there's no one singular definition of ESG. And that's where the term greenwashing comes from. Greenwashing is essentially where you take a financial product, you wrap it in this ESG sticker, this banner, which makes it look like it's environmentally friendly and it's doing things which are helping society. But in reality, it's not really doing that. And you're just stating that it is to make it more appealing to a younger framework, to a younger consumer base. So that is what a lot of people, and at BlackRock, the former head of sustainability at BlackRock stated that is what BlackRock was doing. And considering they are the largest asset management firm in the world, that is quite worrying. So that is a big, big difference that I wanted to highlight between the two. Now, what does this mean? Because does that mean Islamic finance is perfect or not? Well, we'll go into that. But why is Islamic finance, and why are Islamic finance practitioners so interested in ESG? Well, when we started Kestrel, my startup, we actually interviewed over 1,500 Muslims to find out whether they were interested in Islamic finance or not. Did they use current Islamic finance institutions? And also, did they care about what their money did? 90% of the Muslims we surveyed strongly desired a financial solution that matched their beliefs. So there was a strong desire to bring their religious world into their financial habits. But fewer than 5% of the Muslims that we interviewed were actually engaging with any kind of Islamic finance institution whatsoever. So we looked at Al Rayan, which is the biggest Islamic bank in the UK, and none of them were using it. And another thing that they added was 95% of the people we spoke to, so they cared about how their money impacted the environment. And a really cool quote, which I put out here, is, "I care more about my money doing good in the world rather than simply ticking a no interest box, which I think was hugely telling in that, yes, people wanted to do the bare minimum, which was avoiding interest, avoiding speculation, avoiding prohibited type activities, and avoiding uncertainty. But there was this new thing forming, especially amongst the young people, especially amongst the under 35s, that they cared about melting polar ice caps. They cared about rising CO2 levels. They cared about how they could be impacting the world around them and what their money could be doing to the world around them. And that is where the opportunity lies, right? Islamic finance has existed for a while now, but has lost its appeal amongst young users. When we talk to users, we go through exactly the same problems that I had identified. Poor user experience by Islamic banks around the world. If they have an app, it's not really worth talking about. Websites are confusing, lack of trust. They're more expensive than conventional activities. It's a serious turnoff to younger, more tech-savvy consumers. And I think a lot of Islamic banks have realized an opportunity here where ESG seems to be on the forefront of a lot of younger people's minds, and they want to tap into that demand by saying, well, ESG, very similar to Islamic finance. ESG is basically Islamic finance with a new name, and actually you should just come on board and use our services because they're impacting and benefiting the environment. So that's what we're seeing a lot. We've seen that a lot in Malaysia. So with Kestrel, my co-founders are Malaysian. We talk with a lot of Malaysian banks, and we saw a big rise in that over the last couple of years. But what's the reality, and what are the lessons that can be learned here? The thing with Islamic finance is that, as you saw, those things which are prohibited are, uncertainty, speculation, interest, and those prohibited activities. But there's nothing which says investing into a major oil corporation, which is producing thousands of metric tons of CO2 a year, is non-Sharia compliant. In reality, there's nothing wrong with investing into a company like that from an Islamic perspective. Whereas ESG initiatives, they're all over the place and they're undefined. But from an ESG perspective, investing into an oil corporation is very obviously not something that they want to be doing. So I think there are lessons to be learned on both sides here. I think from an Islamic finance perspective, people can be doing a lot more to bring in this values-based framework to Islamic finance, where we look at not just those criteria, but also what is the impact that money is having on the world around us? What do we want to be aligned to ourselves? And from an ESG side of things, I think there's a lot they can take from Islamic finance, specifically drawing upon a rich history of a framework, something which is actually a full definition, which they can lean on, which they don't have currently. A really good case study I wanted to talk about, which exemplifies this really well from the Islamic finance point of view, is stock screening. At Kestrel, we launched an international stock screener. If you download the app today, you can check it out for yourself, where you can take a look at different company stocks and see whether they're Sharia compliant to invest in or not. Now, there was a problem here when we were looking at the different standards, AOFI or S&P or MSCI. These are all different Sharia standards to see whether something is Sharia compliant or not. And broadly, they look at two things: business activity. How does a company make its money? How much of that revenue is from a Sharia compliant source, and how much of it is from non-Sharia compliant sources? Generally, if it's less than 5%, then it's okay to invest in. Financial activity, this is basically looking at how much interest a company makes or has to pay, as well as how much debt, how much liquidity it has, how much cash it has on its books. And there are various thresholds which they have to meet. However, there's nothing which looks at ethical activities. And the reason I've put up this picture, this very powerful picture from the protests of the Uyghur Muslims, is because there are certain companies which will pass the business activity screener for a lot of Islamic finance firms. They will pass the financial activity screener, but they absolutely won't be passing the ethical activity screener. They'll be using Uyghur labor camps or doing other type activities, which are obviously something that as Muslims we want to be questioning, is that something we should be doing or not? And that is where I think there is a trick to be learned by Islamic finance, and where I think the real meeting of minds, the real overlap should really be. By taking that values-based initiative, which ESG loves to tout, whether it's just a PR stunt or whatever it is, if we can apply that within Islamic finance and see the actual impact that we're having, that would be a huge, huge deal. And something I didn't include in this slide deck because I didn't have the time, something we're working on at Kestrel at the moment is I really want Muslims to not just say, okay, I'm doing the bare minimum, avoiding interest and making sure it's Sharia compliant in that perspective. I want to see how much good my money is doing in the world. And the United Nations have launched something called the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them, and they involve things like reducing poverty, increasing education, adding to the environment. These are all these 17 goals that they have. And what I would love to do is, based on your investment portfolio, which you'll be able to see through Kestrel, we'll give you an impact score for how you're actually doing against those sustainability development goals. I think that is the next stage of where we need to take Islamic finance. And I'm hoping that fintechs like Kestrel, ourselves, working hand in hand with larger Islamic banks who have the capital and the power to make this happen, that's how we can make this work, to make sure that we are using our money not just to avoid interest, but to actually do some real good in the world around us. So that is everything I had for my prepared presentation, but I'd love to open the floor to questions, comments, anything like that. Dr. Mohammed, is that okay for us to do at this point? Oh, hello.
Hello.
Hey, sorry. Yeah, that's the end of my noted presentation. I'm happy to take any questions at this point, though.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Areeb, for this wonderful presentation and information, and for sharing the survey as well of your Castle. And we have a good idea about Castle, and indeed, we studied before the session. Alhamdulillah, there's a great initiative that you have taken, mashallah. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to reward you as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we open the floor for question and answer, or any comment or additional ideas. If you have, please either you raise your hand or you may write your any comment in the question box, please.
We've got two hands raised.
Yeah, I think. Sister Hannah Abdul Malik, please welcome, sister. Sister Hannah Abdul Malik, we switch our microphone for you. Please welcome. Or Brother Muhammad.
I think the sister has unmuted.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yes, sister, please. Yeah.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear us?
Alaikum salam.
Oh, she's gone on mute again.
Sister, do you have any question? Okay, Brother Al-Misfawi, Brother Muhammad Al-Misfawi. Brother Muhammad, please. Brother Muhammad. Yeah, please, you may speak, please. We cannot hear you. Please, Brother Muhammad, you have any question? If there are any other question or comment, please, we do have few more minutes.
Okay. Otherwise, if anyone has any other questions, you can feel free to reach out to me to talk about any of this stuff, so I can share my LinkedIn profile. So add me on LinkedIn, and happy to take any messages. Please also do check out the Kestrel app. So I'll share a link to our website, kestrel.io, if you are interested in that. So here's my LinkedIn. So you can check me out there. And in terms of Kestrel, check it out. You can check out the app for yourself. If you're interested in stock screening or anything else that we might be doing, please do check that out as well. So that's our website.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Areeb. I think there is no more any question. Oh, there is a question, I guess. Mr. Yusuf say, my name is Yusuf Sulaiman Mohan from Nigeria. Best regard to the presenter. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Brother Yusuf, thank you for the compliment. Any more question, please, or comment?
Well, what I can do is I can just do a quick recap because there's been quite a few people who've joined as well, who I noticed. I don't think they were in the main thing. So shall I do just a quick run through again?
Yes, please.
So some of the main points. Yeah, I don't mind. So let me do that. So you can see my screen still?
Yes, we can see. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, what I wanted to really address the most was, I think in recent times, a lot of Muslims, a lot of Islamic finance practitioners have been saying that ESG is basically a new form of Islamic finance in some form. It's just Islamic finance by another name. And they're basically stating that it's something that the West has just caught on to now. And I think there's a certain amount of hubris there, where they're saying that we've been doing this for 1,400 years. However, my sort of argument is that that's not necessarily the case. There are some overlaps, but there are a lot of differences and weaknesses within the ESG framework. There are also weaknesses within Islamic finance, which I think we can actually learn some stuff from ESG, the same way ESG can learn from Islamic finance. So in terms of the overlaps, the main overlaps is that they are both ethical frameworks. They're both an idea, a way of trying to do something differently with your money instead of just profit being the only aim. And the idea is that for it to ultimately benefit society, and in the case of Islamic finance, for us to benefit in the hereafter, inshallah, as well. So with Islamic finance, we avoid speculation, uncertainty, interest, and prohibited activities. With ESG, not really the case. There are some prohibited activities, but so for example, something which is like a big oil giant would obviously be non-ESG friendly. However, that's really where the similarities end. And we also saw a little quote from Tariq Fancy, who's the former sustainability and investing head at BlackRock, who stated ESG is really nothing more than hype and PR spin. It's a marketing word. And he says the financial world is greenwashing the public with deadly distraction in sustainable investment practices. I should know because I was at the heart of it. So this is kind of crazy. This is a guy who ran basically all of ESG for the biggest asset management firm in the world. And when he left in, I think it was early 2021, he did this whole tell-all thing in the New York Times. You can check out his whole article and see exactly what he wrote. And it was kind of this huge admission that ESG is really just a marketing term. And this is the heart of the weakness of ESG, is that there's no singular definition. There's no regulatory body. There's no one sitting there and saying, what should ESG be and what it shouldn't be. And that's a huge blow. So I think to align Islamic finance with ESG too heavily can actually be a little bit dangerous. I think there is a big opportunity though. So Islamic finance practitioners are right in saying that the young people want ESG in some way, shape or form. And they've realized that, as we saw in our Kestrel survey, we spoke to 1,500 British Muslims, 90% of them wanted Islamic finance, but fewer than 5% actually use any kind of Islamic finance whatsoever. 95% of them, though, cared about the way their money impacted the environment. So how do Islamic finance firms use ESG? I think we can use it as a way to reach out to a younger, more tech-savvy population. The majority of Muslims are young. We are a young population, 1.8 billion of us. The majority of us are under the age of 30. If we're not appealing to the younger generation.
Procedure strategies to reach the young people.
Sorry, doctor.
To reach to the young people. I mean, what should be the procedure strategies?
Oh, for my survey, how we reach out. Oh, so the way we did it was I went to nearly every British university, spoke to their Islamic societies. I stood outside masjids after Jummah, got people to do it. I was working at PwC. The PwC has a Muslim society, Deloitte has a Muslim society. Most companies have their own Muslim kind of societies, Islamic societies. That's how I reached out to them and got people to actually participate and get involved. So
So,
it was.
Mr. Areeb, do you think isn't it a problem that 95% of Muslims like care about how their money impacted the environment?
I don't think it's a problem. I think it's something which is telling of the time, right? We're living in a time where everything we're looking at, we're seeing pictures of polar bears who are drowning on melting ice caps. We're seeing the Amazon rainforest getting chopped down. We're seeing temperatures and climates changing all over the world. I think it's just part of the international global conversation at the moment. So I think it's natural for young people, and as Muslims as well, we should be concerned with it. You know, as Muslims, we are stewards of the planet. We are stewards of the earth. We've been gifted this world, and we need to look after it, right, for ourselves and for the other people who are to come after us in that way. So we should have some care of that kind of thing. And if we can use ESG to get people involved in Islamic finance again, we can absolutely do that. Now, there's a really interesting lesson here, because with Kestrel, when we first launched Kestrel, we didn't really talk about Islamic finance whatsoever. We kind of said we're for Muslims, but we're more a green, ethical type finance app. And we did that for like 3 months. And very quickly after that, I changed the strategy to just talk more about Muslims and say we'll do our best to be ethical. The reason for this is that even though Muslims care, they care about how their money impacted the environment. And there's this quote here where they said, "I care more about my money doing good rather than ticking a no interest box." This still mattered to every Muslim we spoke to. They still cared about ticking the no interest box first. It had to be that first, and then they cared about doing good in the world around them. So we changed up our marketing. We're Kestrel, the Muslim money app first, and then we go into the ethical initiative. So that's what we found worked in the UK. It's different for every country. One of our good friends and competitors, a bank called Insha, which is a Turkish bank, launched an initiative in Germany, where there's a big Turkish Muslim population. They've got millions of Muslim Turks in Germany. And they launched this Islamic finance app saying, you know, this is going to be great. There's been no Islamic finance in Germany ever. We're going to be reaching out to these people who've lived for 2, 3, 4 generations with no concept of Islamic finance. And they really struggled because they just didn't care. They didn't care that much about Islamic finance. The Muslims weren't that interested in it. They'd lived so long without it. They didn't really see the benefit of going for Islamic finance. So it really varies from country to country, but this was the view in the UK that we found, right? The UK Muslims seem to be a bit more educated in terms of their religion. They seem to understand and care more about their religions as well. So a bit more religiously focused. We're seeing similar things in the US, but it really varies from country to country. And this is what I'm basically saying here is there's a real opportunity. I think whilst ESG can definitely learn from Islamic finance by having a real one code of things to do, Islamic finance can learn from ESG by taking a greater focus on values and ethical initiatives. Because the way Islamic finance works right now is that you could be an oil producing giant, you could be cutting down the rainforest, you could be damaging the planet, but you'll still be Sharia compliant. And a really good case study is stock screening. We offer stock screening activities within Kestrel. Right now, the majority of Sharia standards, the top 5 standards in the world, AOFI, S&P, MSCI, FTSE, and I always forget the final one, but there's another 5th one that you can look at. They really care about 2 things: business activity and financial activity. How a company makes money and whether they're making interest or they have to pay interest. That's it. You could be a company doing these things and you'll appear Sharia compliant, but you could also be building your products, just like Apple, using Uyghur labor, right? Using basically concentration camps, oppressing Muslims in another part of the world. And by investing into a company like that, whilst you're meeting these two criteria, how can something like that be Sharia compliant when you're profiting over basically slave labor and that of other Muslims as well, which is this crazy kind of contravention. And that is really a lesson I think we can take from the idea of what ESG, not what ESG is, but what ESG wants to be. I think there is a real lesson there. And that's really what we want to achieve with Kestrel. By working with our fellow fintechs, but also with big Islamic banks who can have the power and the capital to make this happen, we can actually do this. In terms of countries where we're seeing this happen right now, there's a big push to try and blend ESG and Islamic finance together in those countries. So that's in Malaysia and specifically. So that's basically an overview of what I was talking about. And yeah, if people do have any questions or want to talk to me, I've left my LinkedIn details. You can find me, Areeb Siddiqui, on LinkedIn. Just drop me a message. Do check out Kestrel. I've left the website there as well. Just kestrel.io is where you can find us. So yeah, that's me. And basically, that was my conversation. So if people do have questions, please do let me know.
So how did you create the awareness, or you did these apps? I mean, in United Kingdom, and how did how much responses that you have received from the Muslim community, even non-Muslim community?
Yeah, Alhamdulillah, we've grown massively in just the last few months, where we've hit thousands of users within the UK. And now it's growing internationally as well, because our stock screening product can be used anywhere in the world. So that was a huge thing. In terms of how we've done it, we're just a little startup. We don't have like a lot of money in marketing. So there's 16 of us in total, but the majority of our employees are tech people who build the app, work on the website, that kind of thing. But in terms of marketing activities to get the word out, we really just do stuff on social media. So I can show you some of the stuff that we do, but it's primarily two things. Instagram and TikTok have been really good for reaching out to young people. So I can show you some of this. So this is our website. So Kestrel, helping you to achieve your financial goals without compromise, being featured in a number of different places and some of the stuff that we do. This is the team. So let me just quickly show you here. Once this loads up, what we're trying to build. So myself and Diane, we met at university. That's how we started this up. I became the CEO, he became the COO. We found our CFO and CTO, highly qualified individuals. We were lucky enough to bring on some amazing advisors. Sultan Chowdhury was the former CEO of Al Rayan Bank, the biggest Islamic bank in the UK. James Bagshaw.
Right body, mashallah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, it's good. And then all of these people are tech and legal and compliance. So that's all good. In terms of our, how do we attract young people? So we struggled with this for a while. Like I say, we originally tried to market ourselves as ethical instead of just an Islamic app. But we found that a lot of Muslims weren't really taking to that. They wanted to see something more Sharia focused. So we have a following on Instagram. We post regularly here. Little tips like how to check if a stock is halal, how to use our budgeting tool, isn't compounding haram, the principles of halal investing, this kind of stuff. We've teamed up with many people will have heard Wahid Invest. So we've done, things with them. And this is the CEO of Wahid in the UK. So things like that. We've done live events as well to raise awareness and things like that. But the majority of our users actually come from a platform called TikTok, where we make little videos of things, saying things like how to tell us if a stock is halal or not. And those things tend to do quite well. So it's organic growth. It's difficult. It takes a lot of time. But inshallah, we're trying to fundraise at the moment. If we get the funding that we're looking for, then we'll be able to hire some marketing people.
I think it's very important to reach in the global stage. Very important, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why we're more than happy to come over and speak at the University of Kuwait and talk to people internationally to get people, see if anyone's interested, if they want to reach out, have a chat, come on board as a shareholder or an advisor or anything like that. More than happy to talk.
Sure, inshallah. I think Is there any question or?
We've got a question from Yakub. How do you create awareness? And then I'm in Nigeria. Can I take advantage of the app? Yeah, so you can download the app in Nigeria. The main thing that you can use in Nigeria right now is our stock screening tool. So you can see whether a stock is Sharia compliant or not within our app. So that's the main thing you can do. But we are launching new international products before the end of before Ramadan starts, inshallah. You can also take a look at our investment marketplace where you can see different third-party investments which are Sharia compliant or not. So yeah, you can take a look at that. We've got a question as well from Yusuf Suleiman Muhammad. I've got a question regarding to study Islamic banking and finance. How can I apply for a master's in Islamic banking at University of Kuwait? I'm graduated. So this is probably a question for you, Dr. Mohammed.
I think we have answered him 2
Okay.
months ago. Yes, Brother Yusuf, I think you can just visit the website of Kuwait University. In fact, they offer the programs in Arabic language only. But if you are interested to study in English, I may suggest you to try in International Islamic University, Malaysia, and International Islamic Institute of Banking and Finance, IIB of Malaysia. There is also INSIF in Malaysia and University of Malaya. Yeah, and also there is a Qatar University, Hamad bin Khalifa University. I think you can go for that, inshallah.
I would add to that as well, like if you're trying to get experience in Islamic finance, you can reach out to a number of institutions for internships, things like that. That can really, really help if you're trying to break into the Islamic finance industry. Also, if you're just working in conventional finance, that can help a lot. A lot of people who I started out in conventional finance. I was a consultant working for conventional banks and wealth managers, and then switched over. We've got another question. Which countries can I use this app in? So Kestrel is available worldwide. If there's some problem downloading it in your country, just drop us a message and we'll figure out what is going on. But it should be able to be downloaded in the majority of countries around the world, like 99%. So you can download and check it out for yourself.
Doesn't it need any certification, like local certification or approval?
Yeah, so in the UK, we're fully licensed. We're looking to get licensing in certain other countries. Our features which are offered internationally don't require a license. So you don't need a license to do halal stock screening facilities. It's not considered an investment activity. It's just a screener. So you don't require licensing there. But if anyone is here from an international bank, what we're doing with certain banks in Malaysia is partnering with them to become their tech front end. So where big Islamic banks have good capital and good connections and clients, they struggle sometimes with the tech aspect of things. We have a really, really strong tech presence. We have an app which is ready to deploy. If anyone is working for an Islamic bank and wants to use that, we can use our app with your bank, using your licenses, using our tech. We can actually help acquire way more users. We're doing this in Malaysia right now.
Thank you very much, brother. There is another question from Brother Sufyan. How to strike a balance between Islamic finance and environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's something that we're still working out exactly. I think the answer has to be that Islamic finance has to be the bare minimum, right? People need to come into your app and they need to feel this is a place for Muslims. This is something which is obviously Sharia compliant, and I don't have to question it in any way, right? It's obviously going to be avoiding interest. It's obviously going to be avoiding speculative and uncertain activities, and it's obviously going to be avoided what is prohibited by the Sharia. And then on top of that, you can involve the environmental agenda. You can give people a score, like we're trying to do against different sustainable development goals, saying, well, you've invested into these portfolios, these companies, this is how we consider them actually impacting the environment, for example. So that is what that's how we're trying to do. But I think the idea is Islamic finance has to be the foundation. It has to be the bare minimum of what you're doing, and then you build on top of that. Yeah. Another way of saying it, I mean, I guess it's just popped into my head now, but I think the way I kind of see it is the following. I think is it this slide? Yeah. So I mean, we talked about this, right, as a Venn diagram. Sorry, let me just delete that. we talked about this as a Venn diagram, like what is the overlap? But in reality, it's not really like this, right? In reality, I think it's more like this. I think Islamic finance, I think it's, if the blue circle is Islamic finance and green is ESG, I think ESG sits like this. I think all of ESG can be considered Islamic finance, but not all of Islamic finance can be considered ESG. I think it's more like a subset of Islamic finance itself, where it does have some certain things, like certain prohibited activities, but it doesn't include everything, like the no interest, the no speculation, and certain other activities, right? I think that is more how we see the two actually interacting with each other, and that should be a good way of how we should be building products off the base of that. Cool. Any other questions? How much the minimum amount to invest? So it varies depending on what you're looking at within the app. So you can invest from as little as £100 to as much as you want into certain things. If you're talking about investing into Kestrel, then please drop me a message directly and we can talk about that offline. But we are fundraising at the moment. If you would like to invest into us, talk to me offline and we can do that. But generally, we're talking about like $3,000 to $5,000 as the minimum investment amount. Okay. Are all activities compatible with Sharia? So no, not all ESG activities are compatible with Sharia. Everything we do within Kestrel is Sharia compliant though, but not all ESG activities are compatible with Sharia. Like we said, interest is not a barrier for them whatsoever. I think they do recognize that some of what interest is can be considered unethical, but it's not a barrier. They wouldn't consider not investing into it. So I don't know any ESG portfolio in the world which is fully Sharia compliant, and I don't think that's on their agenda unless it's been created by an Islamic finance type firm. Cool. There's a question saying, how can you reach me via email? So I really prefer if you drop me a message on LinkedIn. If you do want to reach out via email, then you can email here, Kestrel, info@kestrel.io. So that's a general email, which will go to General Kestrel. And then LinkedIn profile, just add me as a friend and you can message me after that. So I've shared the link in the chat. Cool. Anything else, guys?
Okay, brother, just would like to know your elaboration about UN SDGs plan 2030 and how can Islamic finance like strategies can be part of this? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I have a slide, but I don't have it. I don't have it in this presentation. Let me just see if I've got it in my main deck anywhere. But basically, I had this slide where we arranged all of the UN SDGs into these 4 segments, right? Environment, partnerships, education. There are these 4 things, and we want to give a score. I think what we're trying to do at Kestrel, other people are trying to do this as well, but it will take a bit of time, is that with the 17 UN SDGs, I think a lot of them are inherently Sharia compliant. Let me just bring up this picture so everyone knows what we're talking about. My computer's being very slow, but there are these 17 sustainable development goals here, right? So 0 poverty, 0 hunger, good health, quality education, all of these goals that people are trying to reach by the end of 2030. And I think this is what we take, right? I think we take this, we jump back into my presentation, because there's a problem with Islamic finance today, right? Which I brought up here. It's this problem here, right? That we have business activities, we have financial activities to see whether something is Sharia compliant. We don't look at the ethical. I think this is how we solve that equation. I think we take the sustainable development goals and I think we need to apply them on top of what we're looking at. And we need to ask ourselves, if you're investing into a company, let's use Apple as an example, right? If you're investing into Apple, is Apple seriously like hurting any of these initiatives here? By investing into Apple, are you going to be complicit in what they're doing? And Apple has been found, to be using Uyghur labor. They're using slave labor from Muslims in China, right? So because they've been saying to do that, that's immediately hitting number 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, right? That's immediately hitting that, impacting that. Maybe they've got their silicon plant is really hard on the environment because of the mining and the CO2 that comes out of it. Climate action, it immediately hits that. So maybe you want to ask yourselves, okay, maybe it's Sharia compliant by the letter of the law, but is it Sharia compliant in the spirit of the law? And I think that's where the SDGs can be a very powerful framework to come in and be used by. And I think that's how we solve the equation and how we're trying to do it at Kestrel.
Yeah, thank you very much for this elaboration. And I think we are almost at the end of the session. Inshallah, if there is no more question or comment. Okay, thank you very much on behalf of our Islamic. Yes, please. You wanted something?
No, I was waving. Like, thank you. Goodbye.
Yes, on behalf of our association, in fact, this is under the Faculty of Sharia and Islamic Studies, Kuwait University, and it's working very hard to, promote Sharia compliant strategies and models, standards. And for your information, Alhamdulillah, we are getting like more than 1,000 participants in one lecture in Arabic language. 600, 700, 800, even 1,000. And every day we do have programs and lectures. This is what I mean, the association working very hard to reach the community level, even the people, even to non-believers and non-Muslims. So we are very much grateful and thankful to you for your time and effort.
No problem.
Inshallah, we are going to see you again in other sessions in our programs and conference, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. That's fine. Yeah, more than happy to come back and speak. And if anyone has any further questions, you can see my email, you can add me on LinkedIn, whatever it is, you can reach out. That's cool.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank all the participants from around the world. And thank you for joining us today. And see you again and in another session, inshallah. We thank our management board, our staff, especially our Director General, Dr. Areeb, who is the faculty also in Islamic Studies faculty. Thank you so much. See you again in other sessions. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, see you. See you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
سعياً لخدمة طلبة العلم والارتقاء بمستوياتهم، يسر نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي الإعلان عن منصة مدارج لإصدار الشهادات، بوابة خاصة لكل طالب. إمكانية التحقق من مصداقية الشهادات، إمكانية تغيير الاسم. كيف تعمل المنصة؟ بعد حضورك إحدى المحاضرات التابعة لنادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي، يقوم النادي بإنشاء حساب شخصي لك، ثم تصلك رسالة إلكترونية عبر البريد تحتوي على رابط المنصة، اسم المستخدم، كلمة المرور. قم بالضغط على رابط المنصة، ثم أدخل اسم المستخدم كما هو موضح في الرسالة، وأيضاً كلمة المرور. ثالثاً، اضغط على شهاداتي. بعد الدخول إلى لوحة التحكم الخاصة بك، قم بالضغط على شهاداتي. هنا سوف تظهر لك جميع الشهادات الخاصة بك. بإمكانك الضغط على تحميل لتحميل الشهادة. كما يمكنك تعديل الاسم بالضغط على تعديل الاسم الكامل وكتابة الاسم الصحيح. انتبه، يسمح لك بتعديل الاسم الكامل مرة واحدة فقط. الرجاء التأكد من كتابة الاسم الصحيح. بعد ذلك قم بالضغط على حفظ. كما يمكنك تعديل كلمة المرور وإدخال كلمة مرور قوية. تم تسجيلك في منصة الشهادات بنجاح. مرحبا وأهلا بك في منصة مدارج الخاصة بشهاداتك في نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي. شارك الآن وارتق معنا بسلم عضويات النادي. نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي، التأصيل والتميز.
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه، وبعد. أحبتنا الكرام،
ها هو نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي بجامعة الكويت يضع بين أيديكم جدول برامجه لشهر فبراير، مبادرة منه لحفظ الأوقات وسعيا لنشر العلم الشرعي والمساهمة في نهضة الأمة.
واعلموا أن مجالس العلم موائد كرم، وفيها كل المغنم وأي مغنم. فضائل مجالس العلم كثيرة، وأجورها وفيرة، وخيرها عميم، وأجرها جزيل.
نادي الاقتصاد الإسلامي بجامعة الكويت موئل العلماء ومنهل الفضلاء ومهوى أفئدة طلاب العلم الشرعي من كافة أرجاء العالم.
فبالعلم تبنى الأمجاد وتقوم الحضارات وتسود الشعوب. العلم يبني بيوتا لا عماد لها، والجهل يهدم بيت العز والكرم.
وأن إنقاذ الناس من الضلالة وإخراجهم من الظلمات إلى النور أفضل قربة، فلأن يهدي الله بك رجلا واحدا خير لك من حمر النعم.
حياكم الله، أحيوا العلم والأدب وانشروا العلم بين العجم والعرب.
The programs and activities usually cover a wide range of areas in Islamic banking, microfinance, insurance, capital market, equity market. The features are Sharia principles of Islamic finance.
ووفاؤكم لبرامجنا يثلج صدورنا. توضع روابط التسجيلات لحضور برامجنا يوميا على قنواتنا ومواقع التواصل الاجتماعي للنادي، فلا تترددوا في حضورها واحتساب أجرها وتحصيل نفعها، فإنها رياض الجنان.